I have never owned a porch light. My wife picked out the house herself, a colonial on a quiet street in Roanoke, Virginia, with a deep front porch and 2 black lantern fixtures on either side of the door. She had the electrician wire them the first week we moved in. She picked out the bulbs, warm white, she said, welcoming. I took them out that same night while she slept. She thinks I just prefer the dark. She thinks it's one of those things, like how some people can't sleep with the closet open or won't step on sidewalk cracks. A quirk, a leftover from childhood that never got explained away. She has asked me about it twice in 11 years. Both times I told her it was just a habit from growing up in the mountains. Both times she accepted that and moved on. She doesn't know what the habit is for. She doesn't know that every house on my grandmother's road in Fenton Hollow, Kentucky, had the same habit. Every single one. 14 houses on a dead-end gravel road in the mountains of Harlan County, and not one porch light burning after dark. Not one. For as long as anyone could remember. I was 23 years old when I learned why. I have never turned a porch light on since. Fenton Hollow sits at the end of a gravel road about 11 miles outside of Harlan, Kentucky, in the Cumberland Mountains of the southern Appalachians. To get there, you take Route 421 south out of town, turn onto a county road that doesn't appear on most maps, and follow it as it climbs through second-growth forest until the road narrows to a single lane and the tree canopy closes overhead like a hand closing over a candle. The hollow itself is a long, flat-bottomed valley, maybe a quarter-mile wide, pressed in on both sides by ridges that run roughly north to south. The ridges are steep enough that the sun only reaches the valley floor for about 6 hours a day in summer. In winter, less. Geologists will tell you the Cumberland Mountains are some of the oldest on Earth, 500 million years. Pre-dinosaur. Pre-most life on land. Whatever these mountains were made from was already ancient before the first fish learned to breathe air. I didn't know that as a child. What I knew was what every child who grows up in the Appalachians knows without being told, that these mountains are older than anything, and that they remember everything that has ever walked through them. My grandmother, Ruth Ellen Combs, had lived in Fenton Hollow her entire life, 81 years in the same house her grandfather built. The house was white clapboard, 2 stories, deep front porch that ran the full width of the building. She grew tomatoes in raised beds along the south side of the house and kept a freezer full of venison in the basement. She was the kind of woman who made coffee at 5 in the morning and had already done 4 things before you finished your first cup. The porch was where she spent her evenings from May through October, rocking chair on the left side, closest to the door, a glass of sweet tea, the sound of the ridge wind coming down through the hollow as the light went out of the sky. Every evening, without fail, before the last light left the ridge above the tree line, she would stand up from that rocking chair and go inside, and she would never turn on the porch light. The hollow had electricity since 1962. Every house had porch lights. I know because I checked them as a kid. The fixtures were there. The bulbs were in them. They just were never turned on. When I was maybe 9 years old, I asked her about it. We were sitting on the porch and she was watching the ridge the way she always watched the ridge when the light was going. She said, "The dark is an agreement. The light is an invitation, and we stopped inviting a long time ago." I didn't ask what we had stopped inviting. I should have asked then. I didn't ask for another 14 years. The hollow smelled like cold creek water and something older underneath. Something the documentary filmmakers call biological complexity, the product of an ecosystem so dense and isolated that species evolved here that exist nowhere else on Earth. What it smells like, if you've grown up with it, is the specific smell of a place that has been alive for longer than anything you have language for. Not decay, not growth, something between the two, something permanent. The ridge above the hollow had what the old-timers called a ghost forest on its upper slope, a section of dead standing timber, gray trunks, stripped bare, that had been there for as long as anyone remembered. People blamed the acid rain, the acidic fog that rolled down from the high elevations, wildly corrosive from sulfur and nitrogen emissions, cutting plant growth in half for a century. Maybe that was what killed those trees. The ghost forest faced the hollow directly. At dusk, when the fog came down from the ridge, it moved through those dead trunks first, before it reached the valley floor. My grandmother always went inside before the fog reached the porch. She gave me the rules the summer I was 23. I had driven down from Lexington for a long weekend, and we were sitting on the porch the first evening, watching the light die on the ridge above the ghost forest. She was 81. She moved slower than she had. Her hands on the arms of the rocking chair were the hands of someone who has been deliberate about things for a very long time. She said, "I'm going to tell you some things before I can't anymore." She said it the way she said everything, not dramatically, not like she was delivering a speech, like she was telling me what was in the freezer. Rule 1. You do not turn on the porch light after dark, not for any reason, not if you hear something outside, not if someone knocks. If someone is knocking on your door at night in this hollow and they need the light to find the door, they are not someone you want to open the door for. She paused, drank her sweet tea. Rule 2. If the fog comes down early, before full dark, before 8 p.m., you go inside immediately. You don't finish what you're doing. You don't bring the chairs in. You leave everything where it is, and you go inside and you close the door. Early fog means something is moving on the ridge and the fog is moving ahead of it. The fog doesn't come early on its own. Rule 3. If you hear something in the ghost forest, and I mean specifically something moving through those dead trees up there, because dead trees make a specific sound when something moves through them, and it is not the same sound as wind, you do not look at it. You look at your hands. You look at the porch boards. You look at anything close. You do not give it your eyes. I asked her why. She said, because it notices when you look, and you don't want it to notice you. Rule 4. The lights inside the house, you can use them. But no light in the front rooms that faces the hollow after 10 p.m. Kitchen light, back bedroom, fine. The front parlor, the sitting room, any window that faces the ridge, dark after 10. Same principle as the porch light. Light facing the ridge is an invitation. We don't extend invitations. Rule 5. If the creek goes quiet, and you'll know when it does, because that creek has run since before this house was built, and the sound of it is so constant you stop hearing it. But if it stops, you will hear the stopping immediately. You don't go to the window. You don't go to the door. You sit in the middle of whichever room you're in, and you wait. It will start again. It always starts again. You wait until it does. She stopped rocking, looked at the ridge. Rule 6. She said this one differently from the others. Quieter. This one she said like she was telling me something she had been carrying for a long time and was glad to put down. Rule 6. If you are ever outside after full dark and you see a light in the ghost forest, not reflected light, not ambient, a light that is inside those dead trees and has no source you can identify, you do not move toward it. You do not call out to it. You do not make any sound at all. You back up slowly until you are inside the door, and you close it, and you do not come out again that night. She picked up her sweet tea. I asked her what it was. She said, "It's been here longer than the mountains, and the mountains are 500 million years old, so I couldn't begin to tell you what it is. What I can tell you is what it wants, and what it wants is what all old things want." I asked her what that was. She said, "To know you're there." She told me about the Blevins family. This was the story she had been carrying too, I think, the one that put the rules into place for her personally, the one that made the rules stop being her mother's rules and start being hers. Harold Blevins and his wife Margaret had lived 3 houses down the hollow. This was 1987. Harold was a retired coal miner, 64 years old, the kind of man who had spent 40 years underground and came out of it with a specific relationship to darkness. He didn't fear it, didn't mind it, but he also didn't trust it entirely. He kept the porch light on, not to be defiant. He just thought the rule was superstition, mountain people and their old ways. He was practical. He liked to be able to see the porch steps when he came in late. My grandmother said she had told Margaret the rules when they first moved to the hollow in 1979. Margaret had nodded and been polite, and my grandmother had seen in her eyes that she thought it was old woman nonsense and had let it go. You can't make people understand what they haven't seen. In August of 1987, Harold's porch light burned every night for 3 weeks. He was up late fixing an engine in the garage. Light on the porch, light in the garage, lit up like a signal. My grandmother said she watched the ridge every night those 3 weeks. The fog came early 6 of those nights. She went inside and closed the door and sat in the middle of the kitchen with the lights off in the front rooms, and she waited. The 7th early fog night, she heard Harold's dog. She said the sound a dog makes when it is genuinely terrified, not threatened, not barking at a stranger but genuinely terrified, is a sound you do not forget. She heard it from 3 houses down, clear through the hollow. Then it stopped. The next morning, Harold told her the dog had gotten out. He found it at the edge of the property, sitting at the tree line, perfectly still. Wouldn't come when he called. He had to carry it inside. The dog didn't go outside for 2 weeks after that. 3 days later, Harold found the porch light fixture cracked, the bulb intact, wiring intact, but the glass shade cracked from the inside, like something had put pressure on it from within. He didn't replace it. He didn't ask my grandmother why she nodded when he told her. He just stopped turning the light on. My grandmother said, "I don't know what it would have done if it had come all the way down. I don't know if it would have knocked on his door or broken his window or just stood on his porch in the dark. I don't know, and I don't want to know. What I know is that once he turned that light off, the early fogs stopped. The creek didn't go quiet again for years. Whatever signal he had been broadcasting, going dark, ended it." She finished her sweet tea. "That's all it takes," she said. "Don't broadcast, don't invite. Just go dark, and it goes back to whatever it does when it isn't paying attention to you." That night, I went to bed in her front bedroom, and I lay there listening to the creek run, and I thought about Harold Blevins' dog sitting at the tree line, still and silent, and staring at the ghost forest like it had seen something there that had rearranged everything it knew about the world. I told myself it was old mountain folklore. I almost believed it. That was late June. I stayed through July 4th and left on a Sunday morning with a cooler full of frozen venison and my grandmother waving from the porch. I came back every summer for the next 4 years. Every visit, the same rhythm, evenings on the porch until the light went, inside before the fog, front rooms dark by 10. The rules became muscle memory. The hollow stayed quiet. The creek ran. My grandmother had a neighbor to her left, a woman named Darlene Frazier, 60 years old, who had grown up 3 hollows over and moved to Fenton after her husband died. She knew the rules. Every house on that road knew the rules. The summer I was 27, I brought my girlfriend, now my wife, for the first time. She was from Cincinnati. She had never been further into the mountains than a ski resort. She thought the hollow was beautiful. She thought my grandmother was wonderful. She thought the no porch light rule was charming in the way that outsiders find old mountain customs charming, as folklore, as color, as the kind of thing that makes a place feel authentic. I told her to follow the rules. I said it seriously enough that she followed them without argument. Everything was fine. It was always fine when you followed the rules. The summer I was 29, the power went out. A line came down 3 miles up the county road during a thunderstorm on a Wednesday night in August. My grandmother and I were in the kitchen when it happened, lights out, everything dark, the refrigerator winding down to silence. She had candles lit within 90 seconds. Practiced. Like she had rehearsed for this. We lit the back rooms only. Sat in the kitchen. The storm passed by 10 p.m. and the hollow went quiet the specific way it goes quiet after rain. The creek running higher and louder, the insects resuming, the ordinary sounds returning. At 11:30, the power came back. And every light in the house that had been switched on when the power cut came back on simultaneously, including the front parlor lamp, which my grandmother never used, but which someone, probably me, had switched on looking for candles in the dark and never switched off, and including the porch light. which my grandmother had never in her life left in the on position, but which the previous owner of the fixture apparently had, because when the power returned, it came on. I was in the kitchen. My grandmother was already moving toward the front of the house, faster than an 81-year-old woman should move, and I heard her say one word: no. I came into the front parlor as she was reaching for the porch light switch. The front window faced the hollow and the ridge beyond it, and through that window, in the moment before she killed the light, I saw the ghost forest. I saw a light inside it, not reflected, not ambient. A light that had no source I could name. A cold, pale luminescence between the dead gray trunks, deep in the standing timber, that pulsed once as I watched it. My grandmother switched the porch light off. The light in the ghost forest went out simultaneously. The creek went quiet. She grabbed my arm and said, "Middle of the kitchen. Now." We sat at the kitchen table with no lights on. The kitchen faced the back of the property. The windows on the back wall showed only the dark garden and the tree line behind it. Nothing facing the ridge, nothing facing the hollow. The creek was still. Stage 1. I heard it before anything else. Not footsteps. I want to be precise about this, because what I heard was not the sound of something walking. It was the sound of the ghost forest, dead timber under pressure, not the random creak of wind-moved wood, but sequential, directional, moving from the upper ridge downward through the standing dead trees toward the hollow floor. Something coming through the ghost forest, something heavy enough that the dead trunks registered its passage even when it apparently chose not to touch the ground. My grandmother's hand on my arm was completely still. She was not shaking. She had been waiting for this for 60 years, and she had made her peace with it the way you make peace with something that has always been true. The sound reached the tree line at the edge of the hollow. Stopped. Silence except for the absent creek. Stage 2. I made the mistake of looking at the front parlor doorway. The door was open, and through it I could see the front window, and through the window I could see the porch, and beyond the porch, the dark hollow and the ridge. There was a shape at the edge of the porch light's range, except the porch light was off. There should have been nothing to see, but there was. It stood at the property line where the mowed grass met the hollow brush, and it was wrong in the way that things are wrong when your brain has no folder for them. Not wrong in any specific detail I could name, but wrong in aggregate, the way an optical illusion is wrong, where you can see that something doesn't resolve correctly before you can identify what specifically isn't resolving. Too much of it, the proportions of it distributed in a way that my eye kept trying to correct and couldn't. It was not using the darkness to hide. It was using the darkness to watch. Stage 3. It moved. Not toward the house. Laterally, along the property line, slowly, and as it moved, I understood what my grandmother had meant by, "Don't give it your eyes." Because the moment I was looking at it directly, the moment my focus landed on it fully, it stopped moving, and it oriented toward the window. It had noticed me noticing it. I looked at the kitchen table. I looked at my hands. I looked at the grain of the wood the way you look at something close and known, when what you actually want to do is look at the thing in the dark, outside the window. My grandmother said, very quietly, "Don't look up until I tell you." I didn't look up. I heard it at the porch steps. I heard the specific sound of the bottom porch step, taking weight. A sound I had heard 1,000 times. A sound I knew exactly. The step has a specific creak. It has had the same creak for as long as I can remember. It creaked once, then the second step, then the porch boards. It was on the porch. My grandmother's hand on my arm tightened once. Then she did something I did not expect. She reached across the table and she picked up the candle that was still burning there, the single candle we had lit during the power outage, and she blew it out. Total darkness. The porch boards creaked once more. Then nothing. We sat in the dark for a very long time. I could hear my own breathing, and my grandmother's breathing, and nothing else. The creek was still silent. The insects were still silent. The entire hollow was silent in a way that had texture to it. The silence of a place that is being very carefully listened to by something that is very good at listening. I could smell it. I need to say this because it is the detail that has never left me. Not the shape of it, not the sound of it on the porch steps, but the smell. Stone and standing water and something underneath both that was older than either. Something that communicated age the way certain rooms communicate age. Not through description, but through the quality of the air, an atmosphere of duration, of permanence, of something that has been in the same place for so long that it has become indistinguishable from the place itself. It was at the door. I knew it was at the door because the draft that always comes under the front door when the hollow wind is right, the specific draft that has moved under that door for 100 years of mountain evenings, stopped. Something on the other side of the door was blocking it. My grandmother was still. Her hand on my arm was still. I thought about what she had said. To know you're there. That's all it wants. To know you're there. The light was an invitation. The porch light, the parlor lamp, the candle, all of it. All of it saying here, something is here. Come and see what is here. She had blown out the candle. We had gone dark. We had withdrawn the invitation. And now we sat, in the complete darkness of her kitchen, and we were, as far as anything outside that door could determine, not there, not present, not broadcasting, dark. I don't know how long we sat. Long enough that the sitting itself became a physical discipline. Long enough that my eyes had adjusted completely, and I could see my grandmother's face in the residual light from the back window. Still, composed, the face of someone who has done this before and knows how it ends if you do it correctly. The draft came back under the door. The creak started. The insects returned like a held breath released. My grandmother exhaled slowly. She said, "Now we can move." We didn't talk about it that night. We went to our respective rooms, and I lay in the back bedroom, the one with no windows facing the ridge, and listened to the creek run and did not sleep until almost 4 in the morning. In the morning over coffee, she talked. She told me that the porch light coming on had happened once before, in 1974, during an ice storm that took out the power for 6 hours. Same thing. Power returned, lights came on. She had been too slow getting to the switch. That time she had not made it to dark in time. She had looked up from the kitchen table. I asked her what she saw. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I saw what it looks like when it decides." I asked her what it decided. She said, "It decided I knew the rules. It decided the light was an accident. It decided I was not an invitation. I was a resident, someone who belonged to this hollow the same way it belonged to this hollow." She turned her coffee cup in her hands. "That's the thing about the rules," she said. "They're not for your safety." Not exactly. They're a way of communicating. No light means I know you're here. I've always known you're here. I'm not announcing myself to you because I'm not a visitor. I'm not a tourist. I'm not someone who wandered in and doesn't know any better. The rules say, I know this is your hollow too, and I'm not going to pretend I don't know that. She looked at me. "Something that old," she said. "Something that has been in these mountains since before the mountains had a name. It doesn't hunt the way a predator hunts. It sorts. The ones who know the rules and follow them, it leaves alone. The ones who don't know, who keep the porch light burning, who put light in the front windows, who sit outside after the fog comes down. Those are the ones who are broadcasting. Those are the ones it comes to investigate. Harold Blevins," I said. She nodded. His light said he didn't know. When he went dark, it understood that he had learned, and it left him alone. I thought about the light inside the ghost forest, the pale cold pulse of it between the dead gray trunks. I asked her what that was, the light in the forest. She said, "I think it's how it looks at things. When it wants to see something it's found, the way we might shine a flashlight to see what's in the dark. It does something similar, except what it's shining is itself." She refilled her coffee. "It was checking," she said. "When your porch light came on, it came to check, to see if we were someone who knew or someone who didn't. We went dark," I said. She nodded. "So it knows we know," she said. "Same as it's always known. Same agreement it's had with every family on this road for as long as anyone can remember. You don't announce yourself to it. It doesn't come to your door. Dark porch, dark hollow, dark agreement. My grandmother Ruth Ellen Combs passed away in the winter of 2019. She died in the back bedroom, the one without windows facing the ridge. The hospice nurse said she went quietly, in her sleep, which I believe because she had spent 81 years doing everything correctly, and I can't imagine her going any other way. The house passed to a cousin who lives in Lexington and has no interest in the mountains. He's been talking about selling it. I've been thinking about that. I live in Roanoke now. Quiet street, colonial house, deep front porch with 2 black lantern fixtures that have never held a working bulb in 11 years. My wife has stopped asking. It is what it is. Some habits from the mountains don't leave. I keep my grandmother's rules, not from fear exactly, not anymore, from the same reason she kept them, as communication, as acknowledgement, as the specific courtesy that you extend to something that has been somewhere a great deal longer than you have. These mountains are 500 million years old. Whatever walks through them, whatever came down the ridge that August night and stood on my grandmother's porch and blocked the draft under her door, has been here since before the mountains had a name. The agreement those families in Fenton Hollow made is older than anyone living can remember, maybe older than the families themselves. Maybe it was made by whoever was in that hollow before them, passed from occupant to occupant, the way the house itself passes, not through blood necessarily, but through residence, through belonging to a place long enough that the place recognizes you as part of it. Dark porch, dark windows, dark agreement. I took the bulbs out of my lanterns the first night I lived in that house, and I have not put them back. My son is 4 years old. He asks me sometimes why our porch is dark when everyone else's porch has lights. I tell him it's just the way we do things. He's 4. He still accepts things. When he's older, I'll tell him what the hollow taught me. That there are old things in these mountains, things that have been sorting and watching and coming to investigate since before we arrived and long after we're gone. And that the oldest courtesy, the deepest respect you can show something that was here first, is simply this. Don't announce yourself. Don't invite. Go dark. And whatever has been in the ghost forest since before the ghost forest was a forest, whatever blocked the draft under my grandmother's door on that August night, will extend you the same courtesy in return. So far, in 30 years of dark porches, it has. So far.